The research ship Gentle Current drifted silently through the dark space at the edge of known territory. Its silver hull gleamed under the distant light of alien stars. Inside the ship, Chief Researcher Veltar studied the strange readings on his scanner with growing excitement. "Captain Gendai, you need to see this," Veltar called out, his four eyes blinking rapidly. The Zephyrian's blue skin showed patches of bright yellow, a clear sign of his excitement. Captain Gendai floated over to the research station. Like all Zephyrians, she moved with grace through the ship's water-filled chambers. "What have you found, old friend?" "Something that should not exist," Veltar whispered. He pointed at the massive structure visible through the ship's transparent walls. "Look at the construction, the materials, the design patterns. This is not from any known civilization." The object before them stretched for kilometers in all directions. It looked like a giant flower made of metal and crystal, with petals that caught and reflected light in impossible ways. Ancient symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with inner light. "How old do you think it is?" Captain Gendai asked. "Thousands of years, maybe tens of thousands." Veltar swam closer to his instruments. "The metal shows signs of age, but it has not broken down. Whatever built this knew secrets we have lost." The Gentle Current had been exploring this region for 3 months. The Zephyrian Science Council had sent them to study old star formations. They never expected to find something like this. "Should we report this to the Council?" Captain Gendai asked. "Not yet," Veltar said quickly. "Let us study it first. Think of what we might learn. This could change everything we know about galactic history." Captain Gendai nodded. She trusted her old friend's judgment. Veltar had made more important discoveries than any other researcher in their generation. "Begin scanning," she ordered. "But be careful. We do not know what ancient defenses this thing might have." Veltar's tentacles danced over his controls. The ship's scanning beams reached out to touch the mysterious structure. At first nothing happened. The ancient artifact just floated in space, silent and still. Then Veltar made a mistake. While trying to get better readings, he increased the scanner's power. The beam hit a small crystal near the structure's center. The crystal began to glow brighter. "Veltar, what did you do?" Captain Gendai demanded. "I just increased the power a little," he said, panic creeping into his voice. "It should not have." The entire structure exploded with light. Not the violent explosion of a weapon, but something far more frightening. The artifact came alive. Symbols raced along its surface like living things. Crystal formations began to move and reshape themselves. Deep inside the structure, something that had slept for thousands of years opened its eyes. "Captain, I am reading massive energy buildup," the ship's engineer called out. "Power levels are climbing beyond our ability to measure." "Get us away from here," Captain Gendai ordered. But it was too late. A beam of pure energy shot out from the artifact's center. Not toward their ship, but into the empty space beyond. The beam was like nothing they had ever seen. It tore through space itself, opening a hole in the fabric of reality. "It is some kind of communication device," Veltar breathed. "But the power? No one builds communication systems with this much power." The beam pulsed 3 times, then changed. Now it was sending a signal. The message was simple and clear, broadcast on frequencies that would reach across the entire galaxy. It was a distress call, but not just any distress call. This signal carried codes and patterns that were older than most civilizations. It spoke of ancient agreements and forgotten promises. It was a call for help that had not been heard for thousands of years. Within hours, every major civilization in the galaxy detected the signal. On the peaceful worlds of the Altrian Republic, scientists stared at their instruments in confusion. In the crystal cities of the Mindari, ancient computers began accessing files that had not been opened in millennia. The signal was impossible to ignore. It cut through all other communications like a sword through silk. Every government, every military, every research station in the galaxy heard the same message. "Help us. We are dying. The enemy has come. Send the Guardians." But no one knew who the Guardians were. Admiral Kesserol of the Altrian Defense Fleet called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 50 different species gathered in the Great Chamber on neutral Space Station Harmony. "We all heard the signal," Admiral Kesserol began. "We all know it came from the Forbidden Zone." A worried murmur filled the chamber. The Forbidden Zone was a region of space that all civilizations avoided. Ancient star charts marked it as dangerous territory. The old precursor race had placed warning beacons around it before they disappeared. The precursors left clear instructions, said Council Leader Thara of the Mindari. That region is quarantined. No one goes there. No one investigates. No one even talks about what might be inside. But someone inside is calling for help, Admiral Kesseral replied. The signal is clearly a distress call. If there are people in danger, do we not have a duty to help them? The precursors were wiser than us, Thara insisted. They marked that zone forbidden for a reason. Their records speak of worlds so dangerous that they create monsters, places where death is the normal way of life. Old Ambassador Quell of the Peaceful Union raised a shaking appendage. I have studied the ancient texts. The precursors called those worlds Deathworlds. They said the creatures that live on such planets become different, violent, deadly. They learn to survive in ways that normal beings cannot understand. But this signal, another representative said, it speaks of guardians. What guardians? Who were they talking about? No one had an answer. For 3 days, the Galactic Council debated. Some wanted to send a rescue mission to the Forbidden Zone. Others insisted that the ancient quarantine must be maintained. A few suggested that they should ask the signal's source for more information, but the signal had stopped. The ancient artifact had sent its message, and then gone dark again. The gentle current reported that the structure was once again silent and still, as if it had never awakened at all. Perhaps it was just an automatic system, suggested one scientist. Maybe it detected our scanning beam and sent out an old pre-recorded message. Or maybe, said Admiral Kesseral quietly, it was a trigger. Maybe that signal was not asking for help. Maybe it was calling for something. Unknown to the Council, he was right. Deep in the Forbidden Zone, on a small blue and green world orbiting a yellow star, ancient systems were waking up. Computers that had slept for centuries began running through old programs. Defense satellites powered up their long dormant weapons. And in hidden bases on the dark side of the world's single moon, massive ships began their startup sequences. The signal had been received. The call had been answered. The Guardians were coming, but first they had to remember how to be Guardians again. It had been so long since the galaxy had needed them, so long since they had been called to war. On the third planet from the sun, humanity began to prepare for a conflict they had hoped would never come. The ancient agreement was still in force. The promise made to the precursors still bound them. When the galaxy called for help, Earth would answer, even if the galaxy had forgotten that Earth existed. Admiral Sarah Chen was drinking coffee in her office when the alarm started screaming. She had been reviewing supply reports for the Luna Defense Station, a boring job that kept her busy during the quiet years. The human military had not seen real action for over 200 years. Most people thought they never would again. The coffee mug shattered on the floor as Sarah jumped to her feet. Red lights flashed throughout the command center. Computers that had been running background programs suddenly came alive with urgent messages. Admiral, Lieutenant Torres burst through the door. We have a Code Black activation. Sarah's blood went cold. Code Black was the highest military alert level. It meant that the ancient precursor beacon had been triggered. It meant that somewhere in the galaxy someone was in serious trouble. Are you certain? She asked, grabbing her uniform jacket. Yes, ma'am. The beacon in Antarctica activated 15 minutes ago. The signal came from outside the solar system. Someone sent the old distress codes. Sarah ran toward the command center, her mind racing. She had trained for this moment her entire career, but she never really believed it would happen. The galaxy had been peaceful for so long. The command center was chaos. Officers ran between stations while screens displayed information faster than human eyes could follow. But these were not ordinary officers. They were the descendants of Earth's greatest warriors, trained since childhood for a war that might never come. Report, Sarah barked as she entered. The signal originated from grid reference Zeta 77, Major Kim said, reading from her display. That puts it right at the edge of known space. The message used the old precursor emergency codes. What did it say? Standard distress call. Send the Guardians. The signal stopped after 3 transmissions. Sarah stared at the star map on the main screen. Zeta 77 was far from Earth, but well within range of the human fleet. If someone there needed help, humanity could reach them. But first she had to make sure Earth was ready for war. Activate the Deep Space Fleet, she ordered. All ships, all crews. I want them ready to launch within 72 hours. Ma'am, Lieutenant Torres said carefully. Most of the crew families don't even know the fleet exists. The ships have been in automated storage for decades. Then it's time they learned, Sarah replied. Send activation orders to all reserve personnel. Full mobilization. This is not a drill. The next 3 days changed everything on Earth. Hidden bases across the solar system began waking up. On Europa, massive shipyards that had been dark for 50 years suddenly blazed with light. Robot systems began pulling warships out of storage and running them through complete overhauls. These were not the ships of a peaceful civilization. The human fleet had been designed by a species that understood war. Each vessel carried weapons that could destroy entire cities. Their armor could withstand attacks that would vaporize normal spacecraft. Most importantly, they were built to adapt and survive. Captain Marcus Webb reported to the dreadnought Terra's Wrath with mixed feelings. His family had served on the ship for 3 generations, but he had never expected to take command during an actual war. Status report, he said as he entered the bridge. All systems online, Captain, his first officer replied. Weapons charged, engines ready, crew complement at full strength. We can launch on your order. Marcus nodded. Around him, officers worked at stations designed for combat. Every screen showed tactical information. Every system had backup systems and backups for the backups. The ship had been built by people who assumed their enemies would try to kill them. What do we know about the threat? He asked. Very little, sir. The distress signal was brief. But Admiral Chen believes we're dealing with something serious. The precursors wouldn't have created the beacon system for small problems. Marcus understood. Thousands of years ago, the precursors had contacted Earth. They had been impressed by humanity's ability to survive and fight on a world that would kill most species. They offered Earth a choice. Join the galactic community as equals, or remain hidden and serve as guardians. Humanity chose to remain hidden. The precursors had explained that the galaxy was full of peaceful, advanced civilizations. They had evolved on safe worlds and solved most problems through negotiation. But sometimes threats appeared that peaceful species could not handle. When that happened, they would need warriors. The galaxy doesn't need another peaceful race, the precursor ambassador had said. It needs someone willing to fight when fighting is necessary. So Earth became the galaxy's secret weapon. They maintained a powerful fleet and trained soldiers for wars that might never come. They watched from the shadows and waited for the call. Now the call had come. Fleet status? Admiral Chen asked as she entered the Terra's Wrath bridge. 200 ships ready for departure, Marcus reported. Crews are fully briefed. We can launch immediately. Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the human fleet. Each ship represented decades of preparation and planning. Each crew had trained their entire lives for this moment. Do we know what we're facing? Marcus asked. Unknown hostiles, Sarah replied. The signal came from the edge of space near the old quarantine zones. Whatever sent that distress call is probably dead by now. Our job is to find out what killed them and make sure it doesn't spread. The fleet launched 6 hours later. 200 human warships slipped out of the solar system, using paths that avoided all major shipping lanes. They had practiced this departure thousands of times, but never for real. As they traveled toward the signal's origin, they detected other activity in space. Ships from various galactic civilizations were moving toward the same area. The difference was obvious even from long range. The alien ships moved in single file, broadcasting friendly signals and requesting permission to approach. They carried scientific equipment and rescue supplies. They had come to help whoever had sent the distress call. The human fleet moved in combat formation, with scouts spread wide and weapons ready. They assumed they were flying into a battle zone. Admiral, the communications officer called out, "We're receiving transmissions from the other fleets. They're asking who we are and requesting that we identify ourselves." No response, Sarah ordered. Maintain communication silence until we reach the target zone. She studied the alien fleet formations on her screen. The ships were obviously advanced, but they showed no signs of combat preparation. No escort formations, no defensive positioning, no weapons charged. They have no idea what they're flying into, she murmured. Ma'am? Marcus asked. Look at them, Captain. They're approaching a potential combat zone like they're going to a science conference. They have no concept of military tactics. Marcus studied the displays and nodded grimly. Should we warn them? We will, Sarah replied. But first we need to see what we're dealing with. The human fleet continued toward the signal's origin, ready for anything. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations. Factories began producing ammunition and supplies. Military academies activated training programs that had not been used in generations. Humanity was remembering how to be warriors, but they were not the only ones waking up. Deep in space, something else had detected the fleet movements. Something that had been waiting in the dark between stars, watching for signs of resistance. The hunters had found a galaxy full of prey, but now the prey was calling for help. Time to see what these guardians could do. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system and immediately went to full combat alert. Jesus Christ, Captain Webb whispered as he stared at the tactical display. The system was a battlefield. Debris from destroyed ships floated in clouds around the star. But worse than the wreckage were the ships that were still intact. Massive biomechanical vessels that looked like they had been grown rather than built. Count them. Admiral Chen ordered from the command bridge. Over 300 hostile vessels, the tactical officer reported. They're surrounding the fourth planet. Long-range scans show extensive surface bombardment in progress. Sarah studied the readings with growing horror. The planet below had been home to a peaceful Zephyrian colony. Now it was dying. The alien ships were systematically destroying every city, every settlement, every sign of life. What are those things? Marcus asked, pointing at the strange vessels on screen. The enemy ships defied easy description. They were organic-looking, with hulls that seemed to pulse and breathe. Tentacle-like appendages extended from their sides, and they moved through space like living creatures swimming through water. Unknown design, the science officer reported, but I'm reading massive life signs from each vessel. These aren't just ships. They're alive. Admiral, the communications officer called out. I'm picking up transmissions from the planet's surface. Emergency broadcasts from the colony. Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a terrified Zephyrian voice. This is Colony Administrator Velnus on Kepler 442d. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. They appeared without warning 6 days ago. Our defenses are gone. The city shields are failing. They're taking our people. Please, anyone who can hear this, send help. They're taking our people alive. The transmission cut to static. How many colonists? Sarah asked. Colony records show 8 million Zephyrians. The intelligence officer replied. Current life sign readings from the planet. Maybe 2 million left. Sarah felt a cold rage building in her chest. 6 million people dead or captured in 6 days. These weren't soldiers or warriors. They were farmers, scientists, artists. Peaceful people who had never hurt anyone. Fleet positions? She asked. The other galactic rescue fleets are holding position at the system's edge, Marcus reported. They seem to be trying to negotiate with the hostiles. On the long-range scanners, Sarah could see the alien ships, Altrian, Mindari, and others. They were broadcasting on all frequencies, trying to establish communication with the attackers. They had been doing this for hours without success. The bioships are ignoring them completely, the communications officer added. It's like they don't even recognize the signals as attempts at communication. Because they're not here to talk, Sarah realized. They're here to hunt. She opened a channel to the entire human fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. We have hostile forces engaged in what appears to be systematic extermination of civilian populations. Rules of engagement are weapons-free. Priority targets are any vessels threatening civilian evacuation sites. Secondary targets are command ships. Tertiary targets are anything that moves. Admiral, Captain Webb said quietly. The other fleets are going to see us coming. They don't know who we are. Then it's time for introductions, Sarah replied. Open a channel to all galactic forces. The communication went out on all frequencies, reaching every ship in the system. For the first time in centuries, humanity announced itself to the galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Fleet, responding to SOS protocols under Precursor Emergency Mandate 7. All civilian vessels clear the combat zone immediately. Military vessels maintain current positions and await orders. We are assuming operational command of this rescue mission. The response was immediate chaos. Dozens of alien voices filled the communication channels, all talking at once. Some demanded to know who the humans were. Others wanted to know what gave them the right to take command. A few simply asked what a Terran was. Sarah ignored them all. Fleet advance, she ordered. Combat formation Delta. Target the ships closest to the planet first. The human fleet moved forward like a weapon of war. 200 ships in perfect formation. Their approach calculated to maximize firepower while minimizing exposure to enemy weapons. The bioships detected the new arrivals and turned to face them. For the first time since the attack began, they stopped their bombardment of the planet. "They're curious about us," Marcus observed. "Maybe they've never seen our ship designs before." "Let's give them a closer look," Sarah replied. "All ships fire when ready." The human fleet opened fire. It was not like the space battles shown in entertainment programs. There were no dramatic explosions or glowing energy beams. Human weapons were designed for one purpose: to kill the enemy as efficiently as possible. Kinetic projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed slammed into bioship hulls. Nuclear warheads detonated against organic armor. Particle beams cut through living tissue like surgical tools. 6 bioships died in the first salvo. The enemy response was immediate and violent. The organic vessels launched clouds of smaller creatures, living missiles that swarmed toward the human fleet like angry insects. "Point defense systems active," weapon officers reported across the fleet. "Engaging hostiles." Automated guns tracked and destroyed the living missiles before they could reach the human ships. The bioships tried launching more, but the human point defense was too effective. "They're not used to fighting disciplined opponents," Sarah observed. "Look at their formation. They're bunched together like they expect their enemies to run." She was right. The bioships had positioned themselves to surround and overwhelm scattered opponents. They had no experience fighting an enemy that advanced in formation and concentrated their fire. "Second wave, target the command ships," Sarah ordered. "I want those larger vessels eliminated." The human fleet adjusted its targeting. The largest bioships began taking concentrated fire from multiple human vessels. Their organic armor regenerated damage quickly, but not quickly enough to withstand the sustained bombardment. More enemy ships died. The remaining bioships began to retreat toward the outer system, but they did not run. Instead, they regrouped into a tighter formation and began advancing again. "They're learning," Marcus warned. "Look at that approach pattern. They're trying to minimize our targeting advantages." "Good," Sarah replied. "That means they're intelligent. Intelligence can be predicted." She opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships prepare for close engagement. These things want to fight up close. Let's accommodate them." The 2 fleets closed to knife-fighting range. The bioships tried to use their size and numbers to overwhelm individual human vessels. They wrapped tentacles around smaller ships and attempted to crush them. But human ships had been designed by a species that understood close combat. Their hulls were armored against crushing attacks. Their weapons were effective at point-blank range. Most importantly, their crews had trained for exactly this kind of fighting. "Ramming speed," Captain Webb ordered, as a massive bioship wrapped itself around his destroyer. "All power to forward shields." The Terra's Wrath accelerated directly into the enemy vessel, its reinforced prow punching through organic armor like a spear. The bioship convulsed and released its grip, blue fluid streaming from the wound. Similar battles raged throughout the system. Human ships used tactics that the bioships had never encountered. They fought as a coordinated unit, supporting each other and covering their flanks. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, over 100 bioships floated dead in space. The rest had retreated to the outer system, maintaining their distance from the human fleet. "Damage report," Sarah requested. 15 ships with moderate damage," came the reply. "No total losses. Casualties are minimal." Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The human fleet had faced an unknown enemy and won decisively. But the victory felt incomplete. "What about the planet?" she asked. "Still detecting 2 million life signs," the science officer reported. "The bombardment has stopped, but we need to get rescue teams down there immediately." "Admiral," the communications officer interrupted. "We're receiving signals from the other galactic fleets. They want to talk." Sarah looked at the tactical display showing the alien rescue ships. They had watched the entire battle from the system's edge. Now they knew that humanity existed, and that humans fought wars unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Put them through," she said. The voice that came through the speakers was shaky with fear and awe. "This is Admiral Kesseral of the Altrian Defense Fleet. We need to talk." Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the main conference room of the space station Harmony, facing representatives from 43 different galactic civilizations. The room was designed for peaceful negotiations, with soft lighting and comfortable seating. It had never hosted a war council before. "The creatures you fought are called Devourers," explained Ambassador Quell, his elderly frame shaking as he spoke. "We found references to them in the oldest precursor archives. They come from outside our galaxy, seeking new hunting grounds." Sarah studied the holographic display showing Devourer ship movements across 3 star systems. "How long have they been here?" "We estimate 6 months," replied Admiral Kesserall of the Altrian fleet. "They appeared suddenly in the outer territories and began systematic attacks on isolated colonies." "Why didn't you fight back?" asked Captain Webb, who sat beside Sarah. The alien representatives exchanged uncomfortable looks. Finally, Council Leader Thara of the Mindari answered, "We tried. Our ships were inadequate. The Devourers destroyed our defense fleets easily. We focused on evacuation instead." Sarah understood. These civilizations had evolved beyond warfare. Their ships were designed for exploration and trade, not combat. When faced with real military threat, they had no effective response. "How many colonies have been lost?" she asked. 17 confirmed. Admiral Kesserall replied quietly. "With a total population of nearly 60 million beings." The number hit Sarah like a physical blow. 60 million people dead because no one had been able to stop these creatures. She thought about Earth's history, about wars fought to protect much smaller numbers of innocent lives. "Where are they now?" "Here," said Thara, updating the holographic display. Red markers appeared across a dozen star systems. Intelligence suggests they're using captured civilians as food sources for their bioships. The ships actually grow larger as they consume more material. Captain Webb's face went pale. "They're using people as fuel?" "We believe so," Thara confirmed. "Each attack makes them stronger. If this continues, they will eventually be powerful enough to threaten the core worlds." Sarah stood and walked to the display. She studied the attack patterns, noting how the Devourers moved from system to system. There was a clear strategy at work. They're not just feeding, she realized. They're mapping our defenses, learning our capabilities. This is reconnaissance in force. "What do you mean?" Admiral Kesserall asked. "Look at the pattern," Sarah explained, pointing to the red markers. "They hit isolated colonies first, then move inward. Each attack teaches them something new about galactic military response. They're preparing for a larger invasion." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "We estimate the main force will arrive within 6 months," Sarah continued. "Based on the growth rate of their bioships and the pattern of attacks, they're building up strength for an assault on the core worlds." "Then we must evacuate," said Ambassador Quell. "Move our populations to safer regions of space." "There are no safer regions," Sarah replied bluntly. "These creatures will follow you wherever you go. Running will only delay the inevitable." "Then what do you suggest?" Thara demanded. Sarah turned to face the assembled representatives. "We fight. We hit them hard, fast, and without mercy. We make them understand that this galaxy is defended." "With what forces?" Admiral Kesserall asked. "Your fleet is impressive, but 200 ships cannot patrol the entire galaxy." "Then we build more ships," Sarah said simply. "And we teach your people how to fight." The next 6 weeks changed the galaxy forever. Human engineering teams arrived at shipyards across dozens of worlds. They brought weapon designs, armor specifications, and tactical manuals that most civilizations had never imagined. The blueprints were simple by human standards but revolutionary to peaceful species. "These designs are so aggressive," said Chief Engineer Keltar as he studied the plans for retrofitting Zephyrian ships. "Every system has multiple redundancies. The armor is 3 times thicker than our normal specifications." Dr. Zara Okafor, the human fleet's xenobiologist, worked alongside him. "Your ships are built for efficiency and comfort," she explained. "Ours are built to survive someone trying to kill us. There's a difference." The retrofitting program was just one part of Sarah's larger strategy. Human tactical officers worked with alien crews, teaching them combat formations and engagement protocols. They learned how to coordinate fire, how to protect each other's flanks, and how to fight as a unit instead of individual ships. The cultural differences were enormous. Most galactic species saw war as a failure of diplomacy. Humans saw it as an extension of diplomacy by other means. "Why do you assume the enemy will try to flank you?" asked Captain Velnus, a Zephyrian officer attending tactical school. "Because that's what I would do," replied Major Thompson, the human instructor. "Always assume your enemy is as smart as you are, and plan accordingly." Meanwhile, the Devourers continued their attacks. But now they faced organized resistance. The battle for the Arcturus colony showed the difference human training made. When the Devourers arrived expecting another easy victory, they found a combined fleet of human and Altrian ships waiting for them. The bioships tried their usual swarming tactics, but the Allied fleet fought in coordinated formation. Altrian ships provided long-range fire support, while human vessels engaged at close range. When the Devourers attempted to surround individual ships, they found themselves caught in crossfires from multiple directions. "Target their larger vessels first," Sarah commanded from the Terra's Wrath. "Force them to spread out." The battle lasted 4 hours instead of the usual one-sided slaughter. When it ended, the Devourers had lost 30 ships while the Allies lost only 6. More importantly, they had prevented the bioships from reaching the planet's surface. But the victories came with moral costs. "Admiral," Dr. Okafor reported after examining captured Devourer biomatter, "I've confirmed our worst fears. These ships are powered by consuming intelligent life. Each vessel contains thousands of processing chambers." The discovery led to difficult decisions. When human forces surrounded a damaged Devourer ship, they faced a terrible choice. The vessel contained both the enemy crew and hundreds of captured civilians being used as fuel. "We can't let it escape," Sarah said grimly. "If it reaches the main fleet, those people will die anyway, and it will return stronger." "There has to be another way," protested Admiral Kesserel. "We can't just murder those civilians." "We're not murdering them," Sarah replied. "We're ending their suffering. Sometimes that's the only mercy you can offer." The human fleet destroyed the bioship. 600 civilians died to prevent thousands more from suffering the same fate. The incident created tensions within the Alliance. Some species questioned human methods, arguing that the ends didn't justify the means. Others began to understand that war required hard choices. "You make decisions that we cannot make," Thara told Sarah after another controversial engagement. "Is this why the precursors chose your species as guardians?" "Probably," Sarah admitted. "We've learned to live with necessary evils. Your people haven't. That's not a criticism, it's just different survival strategies." As the weeks passed, the Alliance grew stronger. More species contributed ships and crews to the defense effort. They learned human tactics and adopted human weapons. Most importantly, they learned to think like warriors instead of victims. The Devourers noticed the change. Their attacks became more cautious, more calculated. They began avoiding systems with strong defenses and focusing on isolated targets. "They're adapting," Captain Webb observed during a strategy meeting. "Our tactics are forcing them to evolve." "Good," Sarah replied. "Adaptation takes time and resources. Every day they spend learning our methods is another day we have to prepare." She pulled up a star chart showing the galaxy's core regions. Intelligence reports suggest the main invasion force is massing in dark space beyond the rim. Conservative estimate, 10,000 bioships. The number was staggering. Even with all their preparations, the Allied fleet numbered fewer than 1,000 vessels. "How do we fight those odds?" Admiral Kesserel asked. Sarah smiled grimly. "We don't fight them. We make sure they can't get here in the first place." She highlighted a point on the star chart where multiple hyperspace routes converged. "The Devourers are using an artificial portal to bring their forces into our galaxy. If we can destroy it, we trap their advance forces here and prevent reinforcements from arriving." "That's a suicide mission," Captain Webb said quietly. "The portal will be heavily defended." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "But it's the only way to end this war before it consumes the entire galaxy." The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the implications. They were talking about a desperate assault against impossible odds, with the fate of billions hanging in the balance. "When do we attack?" Admiral Kesserel asked finally. Sarah looked around the room at representatives from dozens of species, beings who had learned to fight for their survival. 6 months ago, they had been helpless victims. Now they were warriors preparing for the most important battle in galactic history. "Tomorrow," she said. "We attack tomorrow." The combined fleet assembled at the edge of known space looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Over 800 ships from 43 different species hung in formation, their hulls bristling with weapons that had been designed by human engineers and built by alien hands. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Terra's Wrath, watching the final preparations. In 12 hours, they would assault the Devourer portal. a massive structure that the enemy had built to bring their invasion forces into the galaxy. Final ship count? She asked. 817 vessels operational, Captain Webb reported. Crew complement at 96%. All ships report ready for combat. Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display. The fleet was organized into 3 attack groups. Human ships would lead the assault on the portal itself, while Allied vessels provided support and engaged the defending bioships. It was the largest military operation in Galactic history. Admiral, the communications officer called out. Incoming message from the Galactic Council. Sarah sighed. The politicians had been trying to stop this mission for days, arguing that negotiation was still possible. They didn't understand that some enemies could not be reasoned with. Put it through, she said. Council leader Thara's image appeared on the main screen, her crystalline features showing deep concern. Admiral Chen, please reconsider. Our latest intelligence suggests the Devourers might be willing to negotiate a territorial agreement. We could offer them uninhabited systems in exchange for peace. They're not interested in territory, Sarah replied. They're interested in food. Every day we delay gives them more time to consume captured populations and grow stronger. But the cost, Thara pleaded. Our projections show that 70% of your fleet will be destroyed in this assault. Thousands of lives lost. And millions of lives saved. Sarah countered. That's what command decisions look like, counselor. Sometimes you have to choose between bad options and worse ones. She cut the transmission before Thara could respond. All ships, Sarah announced on the fleet channel. This is Admiral Chen. In 1 hour we will engage the enemy portal. Our mission is simple. Destroy the structure and prevent enemy reinforcements from entering our galaxy. Some of us will not return from this battle, but our sacrifice will protect billions of innocent lives. She paused, looking out at the assembled fleet. Ships from species that had been pacifists for centuries now carried weapons designed for total war. The Devourers see us as prey, she continued. Today we show them what happens when prey learns to bite back. All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. The fleet disappeared into hyperspace, heading toward their target. They emerged near the portal in perfect formation, and Sarah immediately understood why the Council had been afraid. The structure was enormous, a crystalline ring 50 kilometers in diameter, surrounded by defensive platforms and hundreds of bioships. My God, Captain Webb whispered. How do we fight that? The same way we fight everything else, Sarah replied calmly. One target at a time. Fleet advance, attack formation, Charlie. The human ships moved forward first, their heavy armor and redundant systems allowing them to absorb the initial enemy fire. Behind them came the Allied vessels, their crews applying tactics learned from months of human training. The battle began with long-range exchanges. Human kinetic weapons and nuclear missiles struck the portal's defensive platforms while Devourer bioships launched swarms of living projectiles. The space between the fleets filled with explosions and debris. First attack wave successful, the tactical officer reported. Enemy platforms taking heavy damage, but they're concentrating fire on our lead ships. Sarah watched as the Righteous Fury, a human destroyer, took multiple hits from bioship weapons. Its armor held, but the ship was clearly in trouble. Support vessels cover the Fury's withdrawal, she ordered. Second wave, begin your attack run. The Altrian ships moved forward, their newly installed human weapons blazing. They had learned well from their teachers, coordinating their fire and supporting each other against enemy counterattacks. But the Devourers were adapting too. The bioships began using new tactics, sacrificing smaller vessels to get their larger ships close to the Allied fleet. When they reached close range, tentacles and boarding pods began attacking human and Allied vessels directly. They're trying to board us, Captain Webb reported as his ship shook under the impact of enemy attachments. Multiple hull breaches on deck 7 through 12. Repel boarders, Sarah ordered. All ships maintain formation and continue the assault. The fighting became desperate as Devourer creatures invaded human ships. But the crews had trained for this too. Human Marines fought the invaders in narrow corridors and sealed compartments, using weapons designed for shipboard combat. Gradually, the Allied fleet fought its way closer to the portal. The massive structure began taking direct hits from human weapons, its crystalline surface cracking under the bombardment. Portal showing structural damage, the science officer reported, but it's still operational. The gateway is still allowing enemy ships through. Even as they watched, more bioships emerged from the portal's center, fresh reinforcements for the Devourer forces. We need to get closer, Sarah realized. Target the portal's power core directly. She opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, final assault. We're going to ram the portal's center and detonate our remaining weapons inside the structure. Admiral, Captain Webb said quietly, that's a suicide run. I know, Sarah replied, but it's the only way to ensure the portal is destroyed. She looked around the bridge at her officers, people she had trained and fought beside for months. They understood what she was asking. Any ship that wants to withdraw may do so, she announced on the fleet channel. This is a volunteer mission. No ships withdrew. The final assault began with the human fleet leading the charge directly at the portal's center. Allied ships provided covering fire, keeping the Devourer defenders busy while the humans made their death run. One by one, human ships broke through the enemy defenses and slammed into the portal structure. The Terra's Wrath was among the last, its hull blazing with enemy fire as it approached the portal's core. All weapons, continuous fire, Sarah ordered. Take us into the center. The ship shook as it penetrated the portal's energy field. Warning alarms screamed as the hull began buckling under impossible stresses, but human engineering held long enough for the ship to reach the structure's heart. Detonate all remaining weapons, Sarah commanded. Now! The Terra's Wrath exploded in the center of the portal, its nuclear warheads and antimatter charges tearing through the structure's core. Other human ships followed, their sacrifices adding to the destruction. The portal collapsed. The massive ring structure imploded, taking hundreds of Devourer ships with it. The gateway that had allowed enemy forces to enter the galaxy was gone forever. Of the 800 ships that had started the battle, fewer than 300 survived. The human fleet was almost completely destroyed, but they had won. 5 years later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in her office on Harmony Station, looking out at the peaceful space around the former battleground. The portal's wreckage had been cleared away, replaced by a memorial to the crews who had died to save the galaxy. She was older now, her hair showing gray from the stress of command. The war had changed her just as it had changed the galaxy. Admiral, her aide announced, the council representatives are here for the anniversary ceremony. Sarah nodded. Every year, the galactic civilizations gathered to remember the battle and honor the dead. It had become the most important holiday in galactic culture. The ceremony was held in the memorial chamber, where holographic displays showed the names of every ship and crew member lost in the final battle. Representatives from dozens of species laid flowers and offered prayers in their traditional ways. They died so that we might live, Council Leader Thara said during her speech. Their sacrifice reminds us that peace is not free. It must be protected by those willing to fight for it. After the ceremony, Sarah walked alone through the memorial corridors. Each wall showed images of the fallen, human faces mixed with dozens of alien species. They had all learned to be warriors in the end. Any regrets? A familiar voice asked behind her. Sarah turned to see Dr. Zara Okafor, now the head of the Galactic Defense Research Institute. Her old friend had survived the war and dedicated her life to making sure the galaxy would be ready for the next threat. About the war? No, Sarah replied. About the price? Every day. They walked together through the memorial halls, past displays showing the rebuilt colonies and the new defense fleets that now patrolled galactic space. The galaxy is safer now, Zara observed. Every major species maintains a real military. The peacekeeping academies are training thousands of officers. We'll never be caught unprepared again. But we're not the same people we were before, Sarah said quietly. The galaxy has learned to fight. I wonder sometimes if that's a good thing. They stopped before a display showing the current state of galactic civilization. Trade flourished under the protection of combined defense fleets. Science and art continued to advance, but now every merchant ship carried weapons and every colony had fortified shelters.